And as the sound of the Redfern night traffic fades gently into the distance, let's return for a new episode of My Favourite Album, with the second part of my chat with the artist formerly known as @NeilMullane_Finn. Neil Finn on David Bowie and Radiohead. Hunky Dory, moving on a couple of years. Hunky Dory by David Bowie. Actually, do you know 100% if it's Bowie or Bowie? I keep asking this question of people on the show.
Well, I would say Bowie, but I think initially when I was 14, I probably said David Bowie. I don't know. I think the consensus is more often Bowie. I'm sure that if it was Bowie, Bowie himself would have spoken up before now. Okay. Most people seem to say Bowie.
You must reveal your infinite sorrow. Show what you're made of and what you're afraid of.
Flying in the Face of Love. I'm not sure if I can pinpoint exactly why, but I got a bit of a Bowie vibe off that track. I don't know if it's the groove and the way the guitars are interlocking, but it really felt like that was an influence to me. Is that something that you can hear, or am I imagining things?
I wouldn't say I'm specifically aware of it on that song. Maybe a little bit more so on the song Strangers' Friends. Where I recognise there's some tone in my voice that's a little bit reminiscent, and I don't mind that. You know, like if I'm going to conjure up somebody, it's a relief not to be the Beatles. So I never really tried. I mean, that's what people threw at me for years.
Yeah.
Not so much now for some reason. I don't know why, but Beatlesque pop. You know, like it was not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, and it's a proud tradition. And God, they're as amazing now as they ever were. So. But I don't really want to be seen as an imitator, obviously. Little hints of things. Bowie is an enduring character, and I wouldn't say he's no less an influence on me than the Beatles, so happy for a little bit of that to come out.
I think about a world to come where the books were found by the golden ones, written in vain, written in all by a puzzle man who questioned what we were here for. All the strangers came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your droppers insane?
I feel like your approach to rhythm and blues is similar to David Bowie's. Like, for me, first time I listened through to Dizzy Heights, I thought it was an R&B record in disguise.
I'm sealed and tight to the double glass. Come inside, take off your mask. All the zombies in town.
And he has done a lot of stuff where you can, if you listen to it, you can hear the R&B roots, but there's no kind of affectation to try and sound like Otis Redding or Marvin Gaye.
In some ways, guilty as charged, because I really love that kind of music and I'm interested in what makes it work, and so there's elements of that in Dizzy Heights, I would agree. Well, at least me allowing that gene to emerge a little bit. But yeah, I'm very conscious of not wanting to make a homage or a kind of attempt to do a retro thing, which I think is a bit overdone. It's a bit all pervading these days. People may go in and they want to make an original sounding soul record, so they get a black rhythm section and they get the original singers, and they go and record at Muscle Shoals, or actually it doesn't exist anymore, does it? But and I don't believe in that kind of process, but I do think it's good to I don't think the divisions between genres are that much of a concern, that you can't just get amongst it a little bit. And Bowie, I think, did it. He was incredible at it. His foray into soul and rhythm and blues was absolutely amazing. And he actually went to the source and did it well, but that was back in the 70s, so it seems now a little backwards reaching, but I'm happy to embrace a little bit of that.
When did you discover Bowie? I'm thinking you would have been a teenager. Was it with this record, or were you already a fan?
Well, I remember hearing, the first thing I ever heard of his was, Ground Control to Major Tom, on the radio, and it was pretty impressive, but I don't know, I was quite taken by it, but I didn't really... And then we got Hunky Dory, followed very quickly by Ziggy Stardust. I was less impressed with Ziggy Stardust than I was with Hunky Dory, but I liked Ziggy Stardust, but Hunky Dory was a very pivotal record. It appeared to me, and it probably was the case, that he looked like a bit of a hippie on Hunky Dory, because we had a different cover on that record than in other countries. We had the big picture of him with big white baggy pants and long hair and stuff, which was, I think, the back cover of the English. I don't know, it was different anyway. So then the complete image change to Ziggy Stardust was kind of like, I didn't understand it as a 14-year-old or 13-year-old or whatever. That urban camp transformation was quite puzzling for me. I found it a bit confusing. It's just his songwriting was incredible. He was so consistent for so many years. So
I know I've heard from Ken Scott and Tony Visconti and people who have worked with Bowie that a lot of his songs come out of jams, or he'll turn up to the studio with a melody, they'll jam them out, and then he'll come back later with lyrics. And I understand you were saying before that when you're writing songs, you're already recording them as you're writing them. Are you starting to work in that kind of method these days?
Well, to some extent, I've been working in that method for 25 years, ever since I got my first 4-track. And I'm not saying that now it's easier to be able to use a first idea if it happens to be a good one. And in fact, on this record, there's quite a number of songs which I imported or used quite significant pieces of my original work in the recording. Impressions, the first song, actually we recorded an entirely different rhythm track at Dave's place, and I just couldn't quite settle with it, so I actually went back to the more or less the same information I recorded as a demo, including vocal, mostly the vocal.
Right.
From a demo, yeah. Which we then pulled elements from the new recording onto. But yeah, I'm looking both ways at once with records, going back to first ideas, going forward to what's possible, going back to first ideas again. And the songs are, it depends what mood I'm in. At the moment, I'm writing stuff which I really want to be very formed and finished and complete before I worry about recording them properly. But it's not to say that, but up till now, really consistently and throughout whatever the record is, whether it's Crowded House or Finn Brothers or whatever, there's an element of getting the songs written right up. I'm still writing right up to mixing. I'm changing words, changing lines, trying the odd overdub. I'm not quite as bad as Peter Gabriel yet, who famously, I don't know if it's that famous, maybe it's only because I'm telling people, re-recorded a vocal between the first and second pressing of one of his records, so I haven't quite got that far yet.
I heard a story which may be apocryphal about Jeff Beck when he was making the Blow by Blow record with George Martin, and they'd cut the record and mixed it, and George Martin woke up in the middle of the night one night, and it was cool, and George, it's Jeff Beck. We've got to go back into the studio and re-record Constipated Duck. I've got this great idea for the solo. So they went back in the studio, got the band back together, recut the track, remixed it, put it back on the record. Another month later, George, it's Jeff. We've got to redo the intro for She's a Woman. Went back, re-recorded it. 2 months later, George, it's Jeff. Jeff, the record came out last week. We can't change anything.
Yeah, well, that's, I think you'd find that's not an uncommon tendency amongst artists. I think maybe some people are really good at letting go, but most of us just hanging on till the very end to try and there's always some little thing that doesn't seem quite right.
First you reel me out and then you cut the string. You used to be alright.
the last record I want to talk about with you is In Rainbows, the Radiohead album. How did you discover Radiohead? Are you someone who tries to keep up with new music?
It wasn't hard to discover them. They had a huge hit on their first album, Creep.
Yeah.
It was all pervasive. So I was just like everyone else. I heard that song and it was... Actually, I don't know if I was entirely convinced by that song because it sounded so much like the Hollies to me with a big loud guitar solo. I wasn't sure, but they were on the same label as us, and so we had a few, we ran into them a few times on that record and doing festivals, and I got to know a couple of them, Ed O'Brien in particular. The first time I ever met them was in a festival, and I think it was one of the European festivals, and they were in their dressing room, and I walked in to say hello because they were on our label, and our promo guys were the same promo guys and all that, and they were all playing bridge, which I thought was extremely Radiohead in hindsight, and yeah, I was quite impressed by that, but looking a little sad and down in the mouth, as you'd expect. But really nice, friendly people, and we ended up sitting at tables together at various do's and hanging out and got to know them quite well. I've like everyone else, followed the fact that they've been quite perverse about their music. It's actually been extraordinary because in a way they have managed to make seemingly more and more obscure records and yet maintain some kind of pretty big mainstream presence. That doesn't happen very often. So I don't know what the secret is exactly, apart from extraordinary talent and I think massive amount of endurance and soul searching and a willingness to go as far as it takes. And so what I've been talking about is that I think that's an admirable quality in most artists, is that desire. Well, willingness to work as hard as you can, because inspiration and talent are not enough, as we all know, and there's plenty of talented people in the world, and sometimes the difference between the talented people and have a big body of really impressive work and the talented people who fall off the edge is how hard you're prepared to work and how disciplined and focused you can be. The thing about In Rainbows is that I was aware of the process of that record a little bit because I'd seen Ed a bit over that period, and they really struggled with that record. It was a long, difficult record for them to make. It had a few incarnations. They went initially in without Nigel Godrich and then ended up getting back together with him and finishing it with him. And it was it was 3.5 years at least, I think, that one. But the amazing thing about the record is it sounds like it sounds like it was an easy record. It has a very effortless Radiohead feeling about it. You listen to it and it just doesn't sound like it was hard work. And I think that's art, to my mind, is when you listen to something and you don't hear the hard work, the detail, the little incremental elements of effort and skullduggery that go into creating something good. You just hear the pure idea. My hat's off to them for having that kind of endurance, and I think for me it's their best record. Everyone's got a different opinion.
Well, they do sound like great practitioners of what you were talking about before, the ideology of you can be methodical when making a rock and roll album. You don't have to do that kind of let's just get the guitars on and jam it out kind of approach that people think defines rock music. Yeah, and I just think everyone has to find their own method, I think that can work great. There's obviously some incredibly pivotal records in the lexicon of modern music that were made in that high-spirited state, and somebody was smart enough to make sure it was recorded well enough, and they had the balls to leave it untouched. But I don't think you can do that every record you ever make. I don't know anybody whose records would be interesting because of that. I think the times where you have to really work and grind and plumb the depths and get feel an element of despair about what you do and how to do it well and all that counts in the long term easily as much. Are there any of your records or the tracks that people might be surprised at how difficult they were to put together? Numbers of tracks are like that for me, that had many we recorded Fall at Your Feet in 3 different incarnations, 3 different verses. Recorded them properly, in studios, and before we found a verse that worked. And then it actually ended up being quite a quick recording, that one. It was most of the guts of it was done in a day, so once we cracked it, but it took numerous attempts to get that one right. I'll be there when you call, and whenever I fall at your feet,
your tears rain down on me whenever I touch your slow turning pain. You're hiding from me now.
It's been heaps. We recorded a whole, and the whole of the Finn Brothers Everyone Is Here record we recorded twice. So did the whole album once, and then we completely remade it. Extravagant mistake, and I can't entirely tell you why, but I know it turned out better the second time round. Although there's people out there who probably would disagree with those people out there who have somehow managed to get the first version online and swear it's the one, but it's clearly not to my ears.
You cut that with Tony Visconti and then with Mitchell Froome, is that right?
Not entirely. We did. Yeah, well, the first album we made basically right through to mixing, including string arrangements and the whole bit with Tony. And I certainly don't attribute any of the blame to Tony for the way it was. I think there were certain unresolved elements in the way it was put together, which contributed to it just not being engaging enough, not fully fledged. And then the intention was to make redo a couple of songs, which I had made some gains on at home. I'd gone home and done some work on Won't Give In, for starters, and realised I liked it better in a new form. And we went to LA originally with John Bryan, Sebastian Stoenberg, and we had Adam Casper recording. We went into, it was cello at the time actually, and re-recorded a couple of songs, and they just turned out so well with the new rhythm section and everything that we sort of started listening to the other versions and went, something, why don't we just try this other one? And then that turned out really well, and then before you know it, we thought, well, now we're at a point we might as well just keep going.
It means that I won't give in, won't give in, won't give in. 'Cause everyone I love is here, playing once, disappear.
And then we went to Mitchell and he helped us finish it. But yeah, so it was, a lot of people involved in the mix. But that reassured me, or reminded me that sometimes you go in the wrong direction. You shouldn't be afraid to just abandon. Some of the best moments of my musical career is when I've worked on something for a week to no avail, and then you throw it out, and it's the feeling of liberation and relief that you get, my own self-referential quote there, that you get from that is such that you get a burst of creativity out of it. You go, well, damn it, I'm going to do something really good now because that was so frustrating, So whatever the motivation, if it gets you working, it's good.
Close your eyes, go to sleep. Close your eyes, get so dizzy. World is spinning in your bed.
One of the things I've really appreciated about your records in the last 10, 15 years, particularly the ones that have been released under your name as opposed to under a band name, is and don't take this the wrong way, but there's very little interest in being tasteful. And you seem very happy to stretch out and be weird and not conform to people's expectations of what a Neil Finn record should be. And I think that some of that is the incorporation of like the electronic sounds, and I'm wondering if that was at all a Radiohead influence.
I hope so. I mean, that would be part of my mission statement, if anybody asked me for one, is to keep resisting anyone's attempts to pigeonhole me and put me in a box, only from my own point of view too. And keeping music fascinating, I think, is that when you run into something that's difficult for yourself and is not your normal sphere, you, in the course of trying to explore that, you learn things about music and about yourself. If you're just continually honing what you can do naturally quite easily, that is you're destined to become more tasteful. And I'm aware that I'm a polisher, and I'm that's my Achilles heel at times. I polish things too much, like I work things too much and get vocals just so. It's good to leave things loose, but I'm trying to fight that all the time. You're trying to fight your most natural instincts sometimes, and occasionally that might be to their detriment as well. Everyone that's interested in my music, and these, there's not as many these days in reality as there was when we were peaking. But when you're peaking, The people that are interested are only a portion of them are interested in a deep, meaningful way. The rest of them are interested because you're part of the zeitgeist and they want to know what's going on now, and so they'll tune in and they go, oh yeah, that's a cool song, and you go and see them play. They're playing on the weekend, and then you get the sense in an audience of people waiting for the hits and being at the event rather than really tuned into the music. What I like about these days, and I'm lucky enough to have enough people to come and play really, like a good audience, good-sized audience there, but they're there for the long haul, and they are quite delighted when I venture off into unknown territory, or there's a great feeling of freedom involved in that, and like you don't have to just rely on giving them the hits. You're not just on a greatest hits thing. But I like doing the successful songs too. Like I'm proud of them all. I'm not someone who resents his defining moments.
Somewhere deep inside, something's got a hold on you, and it's pushing me aside to stretch on forever.
So what's next? You're writing. I hear that you're going to be working on some writing stuff later today. Are you even thinking about what the next project's going to be, or is your head still firmly in Dizzy Heights?
Oh no, well we're about to do a few more shows in New Zealand. It's kind of the wrap up of the Dizzy Heights tour. We didn't get to play in New Zealand. Apart from the odd one-off gig, I don't think I'm going to be doing any tours for quite a long time now. I just want to really concentrate on writing and recording and bang a few out in a row. I don't know what order they'll be in. I'm not sure what sequence of events is, but I've already been writing quite a bit for about probably 2 or 3 different projects, which are not even necessarily be individual albums. I'm a believer in the album, but I'm also thinking now that maybe it's possible to combine one world with another and make a single piece of work rather than having to always segment and partition off, which I've done up till now. Okay, I'm going to write a few songs with Tim, so therefore we have to do an album, and then we have to go and tour this album, and it's the Finn Brothers, and then we're going to and I want to work on this song that Nick and I made a start on, because there's something about it that was really good, so I guess we'll have to do a Crowded House album, and then we'll have to do a Crowded House tour. That feels restrictive to me now. I'd rather just be able to make music, enjoy the company of the great collaborators I've got around me, and fully acknowledge their roles, but not be forced into devoting 3 years of my life to one particular entity, and have then a succession of people come to me and say, when are you going to do another Finn Brothers record? When are you going to do another Crowded House record? It's just painful, really, to be honest. I just don't think it... I understand that people have an attachment to something that they connected with, but I kind of think, well, do you want me to keep working? Is that the central thing? You want some more music? Well, I'm into that. That's me. I'm really up for that. Now I'm completely... But allow the possibility that I might just make something good that has a different name than what you thought it was going to have.
I can't remember what interview it was, but you used the analogy. It's a bit like turning up at a party with your wife and having everyone say, "So, where's your ex-girlfriend? Is she still hanging around?
When are you going to get back with your old girlfriend?" Yeah, that's just rude. Maybe we'll have a threesome. Next time. But that's for me to decide. There you go. That's a thoroughly inappropriate thing to say, actually. But anyway, it was bad. I'm carrying the analogy a little bit too far.
Neil Finn, thank you very much for talking to me this morning about your favourite albums.
All right. Nice one, man. Great. It was a nice chat, actually.